Hello, good evening. My name is Ben Keats, and I'm just going to make a video um, to put on my umosras.uk website. For any of you that have seen my Umosras website at this point, um, I welcome you in, and I'm pleased that you've got this far to the media page. Um, where if you look at some of the other videos, there's plenty of information for you to look at and to see the workings behind what I put into the creation of Umosras. Uh, some of the information on this website um, is it's all descript. It describes what I've been doing. It's descriptive of what I've been doing. There's not a huge amount of information about how I've been doing it. And for those of you who are reaching a time in their lives when they're resetting their minds and learning about their source and their origin, it's a good time to equip yourself with the tools for building your practice as you would want it to be in order for it to fit in with the creation that Umosras is putting in place under various facets such as Largo or the Academy or the think tank. Um, and it's important to categorize yourself at the level you consider yourself truthfully to be at. Uh, Firstly, it's yes or no questions. Do you consider yourself to be vulnerable? If yes, then you should put yourself in the think tank category, where you will develop your skills as a student in the process of you creating your practice in a kinder environment, in an environment where you are looked after, you are managed, your ideas will be compartmentalized. You have no problems, no worries about losing your ideas to the media maelstrom in the think tank. In the upper city, however, if you're in that vulnerable stage in your life and you consider yourself to be vulnerable, you may lose out to the overall um, buzz of the city, and therefore you will not find yourself partitioned and set into a CADSA, a knowledge acquiescence database senior, that will be yours ultimately when you graduate as a senior from either within the city or within the think tank. So it's important to be honest and truthful to yourself. Do you consider yourself to be vulnerable? Are you someone who maybe isn't as streetwise as some of the other people? Are you the sort of person who goes along with the crowd, who follows what other people do? You don't have anyone particularly who you're thinking of um, developing yourself to improve their life. You're maybe you find yourself maybe more one of those people who has to survive themselves, and because of that, if you have a family and a wife and all that sort of thing, or husband, perhaps maybe your intentions are more around just going out and making money rather than actually developing yourself into someone who can become an entrepreneur. Um, and it's this change that's going to be very difficult for some people to take. I mean, it shouldn't really be money that's your goal at this stage, at the stage of origin. What should be your goal more, and what's more important, what will get you moving faster, is this creation of thought within yourself. And so these people, I would say, people who need to create thought, who need to think up ideas, lots of ideas, original ideas, and be truthful to yourself about this. If the idea is original, you'll gain much more fruitfully when you possess your own knowledge acquiescence database. Uh, so it's important to categorize yourself, to think of yourself truthfully, and to understand whether you're vulnerable or not. Once this has been established, we can then move on to the next step, which is deciding on what your position would be within the think tank. We're talking about this side first. Um, what your position would be. Would you be an ambassador in the think tank, someone who would manage other people's CADSs and not be able to think up ideas themselves? You don't have to be an ideas creator yourself. Or would you find yourself to be someone who is creative at heart and who has much more capability of dreaming up ideas, and therefore you would put yourself into the student program that would eventually mesh with the academy and hopefully graduate you as a senior? Now, if you consider yourself to be an ambassador, this is no problem in terms of financial issues or getting set up somewhere within the atmosphere, within the realm of the Umosras created landscape you live in. Primarily, the reality of the ambassadors is slightly more mundane than the students who dream up ideas and collectively create things that can be the artisan design of the whole realm of ENA and the whole future realm of Plate One and the future of the other realms that come from ENA. Um, so it's important, really, to decide first and foremost: are you going to be a creative thinker who can dream up ideas, or are you going to be someone who can either help manage other people's CADSs or farm from the data pipes areas within the think tanks and network with the outside world using your existing skills, maybe in financial areas or in business or in anything to do with the outside world where you have negotiated deals or worked in management or worked as on a board committee or something like that. You may consider your skills to be quite useful as to bargaining the value of these existing legal infrastructure, sorry, the legal organizational direction of the CADSs to get them to go to be accepted by existing corporate uh, um, entities on the earth, who will therefore decide whether or yes or no, to decide whether or not to accept these CADSs as something that could be um, a, a goal towards changing the existing structure of the landscape of the corporate world outside the realm where you live. If you consider yourself to be good at that sort of thing, then you can subdivide into those different categories. And finally, you know, that if you believe yourself to be on the side of the law-abiding type person who can instill a legal remit and help people structure their CADSs in a legal way, and make sure that people aren't too light fingered concerning each other's CADSs, and some people you may find start stripping assets or cloning ideas or coming up with ideas that other people have had and coming up with lots of them. You know, they may be quite savvy at understanding what other people are doing without actually doing anything themselves. Really, these people should be recategorized early before they get into the academy, because you know, if they get into the academy in that sort of process with those sort of ideas going on from other people, then they're just going to be dead wood when it comes to reaching the cherub or the heroes phase, which you can read about on my academy website, which is grassroots.ucos.org. Um, there's also a video I put on there just outlining the whole website. So that's quite easy to have a look at if you have a moment. But anyway, that's the think tank dealt with. You may consider yourself to be in a position where you're already established as an ideas creator. You may have your own business, but you may consider yourself to be less vulnerable than other people may be, and you may consider yourself, uh, you know, ambitious enough and talented enough to set up on your own, either to start a career straight away within the academy or to start a business within the remit of ENA. These people, you know, most of them probably won't come to the academy. Some of them may get jobs at the academy working with the other students. and using their business ideas or their acumen, their world acumen that they've gained from living on the planet elsewhere, or at different times before the whole concept of came into being. Um, those people, I would say, yep, by all means, if you got the confidence already to do that, and you feel that you're reset enough in your mind to understand the spiritual universal type element that other people will be going through, and will be able to mesh your ideas and host you use your company as a host for heroes from the academy or from the think tank, or people who are going to network with your business, understanding what they're going through and the whole process that's training them will be a useful asset, and it will serve your business well if you set up here and do that sort of thing. Get involved with those sort of people uh, at the level you're concerning yourself to be at. You won't be given a strict academy level like other people will, who go through the think tank academy process, who develop themselves through the step program to finalizing at a serif, which is step 6. But you will have a sort of equivalent in your mind of the sort of level you're at and the sort of capabilities you have. From the level of, say, between step 3 and step 5, or if you're actually a senior through default, that could also be a possibility. You could actually be a serif by default, and therefore um, host your own creative entity as a Sarah practice in the future, once it's been vetted by the whole academy system and seen that it's done what it needs to do. So, back to the main point. I was going to talk about some of the skills people could learn um, before setting foot in a realm that is a universal realm, in a realm that is managed by this sort of program, by Umosras program. And before we get on to dealing with computers and setting up the technology and the command line and the scientific side of everything else like that, it's also good to know what your inner languages are, to know what you're made up of, to know what you're encoded with, what your history is, how deep you go in terms of history, how where that comes from, and what that becomes in yourself, as a developer of an idea, someone who's got an idea but they haven't quite seen it to fruition, or someone who's come up with some great concepts but hasn't actually got a way of processing it, because the idea is slightly ephemeral, it's slightly out of this world, um, and to avoid scorn, to go on video, to get media training, all that sort of thing, and talk about something that's slightly ethereal, slightly conceptual rather than physical, is very difficult to do. My whole project has been conceptual. I mean, some of it I'm getting results with technologically, which is why I started to get the confidence to make videos. But a lot of the stuff I've set up and created, it's very difficult to hack it out with someone, to have a conversation and say, I'm doing this, I'm creating a platform, I'm doing, this is my business model, these are the academy program. A lot of people just say, yeah, it's a pie in the sky, how can you sell that? But what you actually got to do, if you've got these ideas, is knuckle down and start to do the hard work, start to create, through your being in touch with your language skills, your ability to understand where you come from. We're all nomadic. We've all come from different places. Our source, our roots, our language. A lot of us will all go back to Proto-Indo-European languages, which can be tapped into when you've taken the deeper when you go through the deeper channels. In the mind it's more escalated, it's faster. In my language it is more Romansk, but in some people's languages it may be Germanic in their mind or Romansk in their body. It's difficult to say, but you have to understand conceptually what your languages are telling you, how they're directing you, how you're understanding the course you're going to take, and how your creative reality is going to manifest itself. through some sort of structure that has a slightly more divine level, a divine power that is guiding you through this process. And the best way to learn this is, far from becoming someone like the Fifth Element and going completely bonkers, is just, tapping into your mind language. Learning a little bit about what your mind is, what you're created with, what the building blocks of your DNA are structured with. And a lot of us are going to fall into this proto-Euro in European Indo languages, PIE languages. And these languages are basically the first language that was spoken on the planet that we know about. I mean, if you go back to more recent history, you get the Sumerians, you get the history of the languages that they spoke. It's all written in cuneiform. We understand how that all manifests itself through the so-called Anunnaki who arrived and structured the Sumerian civilizations with languages and written language and all that sort of thing, and education and calendar and whatever else they gave to them. But if you go prior to that, if you go almost back to the caveman in you or cavewoman in you, you're going to find some sort of language that speaks that is that you start to structure yourself with it. And if you really want to take a leap of faith and you have no computer programming knowledge before you start out and develop yourself, because at the pinnacle you're going to be able to use computer programming on a universal structure. When the consumer restraints and everything is made safe and you're on a system that's secure anyway, if you're at the think tank or if you're in the academy or if you're in the university or part of the city itself, you're going to find that programming through the computer is almost it's a natural occurrence because you've gone through so much ritual in the inputting of this primitive language into the computer, that you start to understand rhythms and the mechanism of entering into the system of creating your own network or your own practice. So these are some of the things you want to think about. I can't tell you exactly how to do it. I can't teach you yet until we develop into the stage where we start to develop people directly on how to program or what people should be programming or how they should be doing it. I have put one video on my Facebook page, but it's SAFCOM's limited Facebook page, but it's not a hard science at the moment. There's not, there's a lot of information to do with people filling up their creative ideas, maintaining it on a system. If you're clever enough, this is something I've only got into recently, but what I did, actually, I did everything in reverse. I started with the building blocks of my DNA structure, creating the language of what I was made up of through computers without even using command prompts and all that sort of thing. I was using my websites and all this sort of thing and pages on my websites. And, what I developed into was this. I got command prompts. I developed into using computer analysis and direction in what I was programming. I tapped into some creative works that I'd started to do, and I developed these processes further with command prompts, and eventually generated into the concept of actually trimming things down and learning how command prompt works and learning certain computer codes on computers, simple things, and the whole thing meshed, and it came to the point where I was able to access my computer logic from the source. And what I actually was able to do was, drum up the creative reality that I created at source, kept it all in the ether, in the light web, where everything will be harvested anyway. Your CADs will still be maintained and looked after in the bit hyphenation process. If you look on Technology Zavina. But what I eventually came into was building my own server. Eventually I said, well, what I need is a server. I came to the point where that would be a good idea to host all my creative works from one server. And that was almost the final stage in my whole creative exploits, was actually coming to the point where I built my server at the end. And this is probably the way I want people to do it, because what I want people to do, I don't want people to start off saying, right, I'm going to get a massive great server and then do everything. Because those people are too technic savvy anyway. Some people will do it like that because they'll be doing it to make profit from the start. But the whole business about doing things the Powie way, the way we work in the Powie creative network, is to generate ideas. You're more open, you're more susceptible to the existing legal infrastructure outside to begin with as you start to develop your ideas and start to process your ideas through command prompt or command line or whatever way you're doing it to fathom your ideas. And eventually you develop in someone who owns your own commodity, which is a much better way. You share it out with the community first rather than setting up your server first of all and then meddling around with other people's ideas to sort of enrich yourself. This is the way the world has gone on for years and years and years and years. This is the way people do it, but it's the wrong way. It's not the ethos of the Amberley, of the Universal City, of the university. And they made sure that I never did things like that. They made sure that if I did become accomplished doing computers or doing business or whatever I did, that I'd done it for the right reasons. The whole process is put around you once you're in classification for a shake-up in the way we do things and new way of thinking and in the new technologies that we're creating, everything else. We're moving sky's the limit. You're going to have to accept the fact that some of your ideas can be taken off you in the interim phases to develop space programs or to develop other areas around the world that can call a common wealth in inverted commas. Because what we're going to do is, we're going to maximize profit. Everyone's going to have plenty of money. They're going to have enough money in universal credits to be able to have whatever they need: a house, a car, flying craft, whatever it is. Portals for the Yesu or food, whatever it is. Interior artwork, the designs of their house and the networks they use and the communications equipment and everything else. It'll be a means tested tax haven. Some people will have to pay, some people won't have to pay, but everyone's going to get to the phase where if they do get on a program of some sort, they're going to be looked after because we've got the universal wealth, we've got the wealth of the universe here, we've got enough to make people secure. So that's the idea, that's the process. So don't worry about securing your idea first. And building a whole rigid block around it so that you can't get any creation out of it in the first place. The whole point about making things create when you're open is just teaching the idea, and you get into this whole teacher-student process where you start to listen, you start to inform yourself, you start to fill your memory banks up with what people are teaching you, and at the same time you input, almost like psychologically with ESP from your mind, from your third eye, you start to interface with what they're doing. And this interface process, not only does this get given back to you at the end, it also gets collated in the system that is the whole hosting of Umosras. And it secures your future. And ultimately, you will have your own server, you will have your own network, and you will have your own creative input to bring to the party. And the part that you create of it is your own. That's the way it works. So don't worry about it. Don't feel that you've got to go and copy the greatest things that people do when they suddenly find they've got a whole load of intangible assets or physical assets that can't quite be secured, and suddenly they've secured it. If you're securing just an idea, you're almost blocking it from being nurtured by you in the whole processing of that idea. So grow into it like a vine, and it'll bear fruit.